Hello everyone, welcome to our first AI show where myself and Kevin Kieller will be digging into some of the latest AI news headlines, followed by a conversation with Brent Kelly, Principal Analyst for Unified Communications and Collaboration within Omdia's digital workplace team. And together we're going to be discussing the key takeaways from Kevin and Brent's recent Enterprise Connect session on AI, exploring LLM vendor offerings, AI risks, including the risks of generative AI in UCaaS solutions. So lots to come. Welcome, Kevin. How's it going?
Well, it's great, Rob. I'm excited to do this first episode of the AI show.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so much going on in AI right now. Where to start? I mean, we've had conversations about this, but we're going to start with some news today, just some recent headlines, dig into those a little bit, and then we'll jump onto an AI minute where we're going to discuss also a new term that we've picked up on in AI it seems seemingly raising eyebrows. So looking forward to that. But first of all, let's talk about the news. I mean, look, there's lots going on right now. But one piece of news that I pulled out from UC Today just in the last week or so was Microsoft and Coca-Cola partnering up on a big AI 5-year partnership deal. I mean, I'm wondering how Coca-Cola kind of connects with AI. But Kevin, what's your take on this story?
Yeah, I think they announced a $1.1 billion deal over 5 years. Obviously, Coca-Cola has been a big Microsoft shop, and as part of that, big consumer of Azure services. So this really just cements that deal. And also, really, what I'm excited about is it gives the opportunity for Microsoft to work with a large enterprise like Coca-Cola to help build out Co-Pilot capabilities. Because as you know, Microsoft has gone all in on Co-Pilot, Satya declaring they're the Co-Pilot company. To my count, they've introduced 20 Co-Pilots in different products. And all of these are evolving. So I think 2024 is really a year of experimentation. And what a fantastic opportunity really for all of us that an enterprise like Coca-Cola and Microsoft will be working together to really improve Co-Pilot. And really in this context, probably the Co-Pilot for Microsoft 365. So I think the takeaway is great to see, these kind of collaborations because we're all going to benefit, I think, over time.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's ultimately going to advance the use of AI, isn't it, within the workplace? And it sounds like Coca-Cola employees can get excited about some of the kind of new innovations that they can explore with Copilot. So yeah, lots to come there, and a huge investment. Wow, 1.1 billion, it's massive.
Absolutely.
Well, the next story I wanted to talk about was on CX today, which was a story about Pegasystems unveiling their latest AI coach or co-pilot. And I was keen to kind of just get your view on this. Is this just another co-pilot doing the same things as all the other things, or is this a differentiated offering?
Well, I think with Pegasystems, so Pegasystems has, this kind of automation platform, right? So they've got some low code tools and they focus on automating things. So what they're really talking about is using some of this generative AI to not only generate content, but really to try to help you um, better understand, potentially provide some customized training around your workflows, and then maybe help you in some of their low code, no code tools to use AI to, kind of do the coding for you behind the scenes, right? So
Yeah.
what they're really trying to do is plug generative AI, like many vendors, into the platform that they already have that's quite powerful, and unlock more capabilities of the platform. So I think that they've got a conference coming up in June, and so they said they're going to really be showing off some of these capabilities then. So I think it'll be interesting to see what they show off, and how they kind of combine the Gen AI with the platform they already have.
Yeah, I think you're right. So effectively, they have plugged in generative AI to the platform, and that's going to open
Right.
up all sorts of kind of functionality for users, for automating processes, for better real-time kind of, I suppose, data insights and all that kind of thing, which comes along with having AI connected to your data platform or CRM, or I think Pegasystems is a BPM, isn't it? A business process management solution. So Yeah,
Yeah, they
very,
do
very.
a bunch of things. And so obviously, like in the context of a contact center, you can automate some of the agent processes, but it's, they're certainly talking more broadly just about, for knowledge workers, just automating other business processes with Gen AI.
Yeah, yeah, lots to come on that, I can imagine. Right. Well, and another story I've curated was, and I think we've covered it on UC today as well, which is the launch, the official launch of Amazon Q, which is again another generative AI powered assistant. I believe it's designed for businesses and developers, but it's now generally available. What's your take?
Yeah, so first off, I love the name. I think, I mean, maybe that's a reference to the character Q in Star Trek, right? Which it's funny because I asked generative AI, okay, so is Q good or evil? And the response was he is neither purely good nor evil, but rather a powerful being with his own unique motivations and methods, which I think if you could kind of describe AI that way, that's like, okay, that's both, some of what Brent and I will talk about some of the risks, right? Because AI, sometimes it's not clear what the motivations are. But Amazon Q, as you said, it really has two focuses. There's what they call Amazon Q Developer, which is really about helping you code, but more than just coding, helping you test and do, some of the regression testing, the refactoring, a whole bunch of some of the scut work that you do when you're a developer. So they've got that piece. And then they've got Amazon Q Business, which is much more focused on employees, making it easier for employees to get answers for questions across all of their, kind of their business data. And then there was a third kind of product, Amazon Q Apps, which is in preview, which is really a tool to allow you to use generative AI to create um, applications. So it's another kind of low code, no code, describe what you want, and then Amazon Q Apps will help you build Gen A powered apps for your business. So really kind of three focuses.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Kevin. And last story I'd like to cover today is, I suppose, a really hot topic always in AI, and that is another story that I picked up on from another publication that was talking about Google and its recent study, which has revealed there's no straight line between generative AI and unemployment. So I'd love to dig into that one. What's your take on this story?
Yeah, so I mean, we'll obviously post the links to the stories that we're referring to. And on this particular one, this article summarized a more lengthy study. And I would encourage kind of the audience here to look at the more detailed study because I read that. And this is really kind of a good news, bad news. So as you said, they said, hey, there's no direct correlation between AI and job loss or unemployment, and they said at least in the short run. Now, but when you dig into it, they also talk about how rapidly things are improving. So they cite, for instance, in 2022 with GPT-3, it could perform, it beat to only 10% of the of humans on the bar exam. But then 1 year later with GPT-4, now AI was, beating 90% of the humans, right? So, I think that they're saying, well, okay, in the short run, but the short run might be pretty short. The other thing is they also talk about, they say, well, 85% of the total job growth in the US since 1940 is really into new jobs that didn't exist in 1940. So, the good news part of that is they're saying, well, maybe generative AI will create all these new jobs. We don't know what they are yet. But I think with what mutual funds, they say historical performance is no indication of what the future will bring. So, it's a little unclear, there. Um, and the other thing that I found interesting is they talked about a group of people created this, what they call the massive multitask language understanding benchmark. So they create this in 2020. And there was like 57 different tasks that they thought would be pretty difficult for generative AI or general AI to be able to execute on. And, so that's 2020. Fast forward to just at the end of last year, Google's Gemini Ultra model was able to outperform human experts on 90% of these tasks, right? So there's one quote that stood out for me because it said, current technologies have demonstrated expert level performance at tasks requiring, and then listen to this, creativity, analysis, problem solving, persuasion, summarization, and other advanced skills. So if you think about, okay, so AI can do all that at an expert level, I'm not sure what that
There's not
leaves
much
for
left, is
us,
there?
humans, right? So there's not a lot left. And they go on to talk about how it probably will hollow out job opportunities at the higher end, and in fact likely will impact people that have a college degree. So they talk about, for example, professional writers who typically have a college degree. They're saying that in their tracking, there's less contract writing opportunities over the last year, and they're attributing some of that decline to the availability of Gen AI. So
But that is interesting, isn't it?
they specifically call out call center employees, management consultants, coders, professional writers, and physicians as educated groups of people that may have at least some of the jobs or certainly portions of the jobs hollowed out by generative AI. So fascinating, and absolutely would recommend people click through and read the deeper, longer
Yeah, we're going to
article.
put a link in the description to that one. So yeah, really interesting. Right, next up, we said as part of our show, we're going to have an AI minute with Kevin to discuss a term, one that's maybe trending, one that we're hearing that kind of needs a little bit demystifying. And today's word is grounding. Kevin, what is grounding, and why is this word an important one to know?
Yeah, so here's, as you said, the AI minute. So grounding really refers to this process of providing large language models, or LLMs, with specific relevant information that's not part of the pre-trained knowledge. So in short, grounding provides LLMs with better context, and context is really important. You may also hear kind of an associated term called RAG, retrieval augmented generation. This is a common form of grounding. So let's just real quickly take a look at kind of how a large language model works with grounding and without grounding. So you have a large language model. In the typical case, you have a prompt. That's what you write. You feed it into the large language model, and it gives you results. So that's great. Large language models have a lot of information, but without grounding, they can only answer questions based on whatever sources they use for training. And it's only as up to date as when it was trained. So for example, if you say summarize the top news stories for this week, if you're using like Chat GPT 3.5, it was last trained and updated January 2022, can't do it. Describe the weather will be in Toronto where I am next week, can't do it. Help me prepare for my upcoming meeting with Rob, has no idea who Rob is. When should I schedule the next call with Brent? Doesn't have access to my calendar or anything. So now let's take a look at the real power of grounding. So in this case, you write a prompt, it feeds it into the large language model, but then you have some kind of orchestration engine that might use the large language model to understand what you're trying to do. And this orchestration engine now sends a query to other data sources. A real common data source, as you would expect, is the web. So it could do a web query. It could be connected to your product knowledge base to answer specific questions about your products. It could be connected and have access to previous meeting notes or your calendar or emails or chats or other business information. So this query then returns the query results. And now the orchestration engine takes both the original prompt and this query results, feeds that, so that important grounded context into the large language model, and generates the results, which means with grounding, you could summarize the top news stories. You could describe what the weather will be, help me prepare for my upcoming meeting with Rob because it looks at our previous discussions and emails, and it may have access to my calendar and Brent's calendar so it can propose when a call should be next scheduled. So the key thing is with grounding, LLMs can provide more accurate, up-to-date information. And really, grounding is what is key to developing what we think of as an AI assistant. And so the takeaway is you really, whatever UCaaS or AI large language model you're using, you really want to understand what sources of grounding or retrieval augmented generation your tools are able to tie into. And the accurate, grounding also reduces risk. And this is something that certainly Brent Kelly and I spoke about at our Enterprise Connect session and want to drill down on a little bit more right now.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kevin. A great explanation. I hope you've all enjoyed that, because that is absolutely essential knowledge when looking at AI and LLMs and that kind of thing. So let's move on. I'd like to introduce today's guest speaker, Brent Kelly, Principal Analyst for Unified Communications and Collaboration within Omdia's Digital Workplace team. Kevin, Brent, welcome.
Hi, Rob. Thanks. Kevin, it's good to be with you today.
Good to see you.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you for joining. As I mentioned, you and I had the pleasure of co-delivering with you a session at Enterprise Connect on LLMs and Unified Communications as a Service products and how they combine. Now, we covered in that 45-minute session, I think like 90 minutes worth of information.
Yeah.
But for today, really wanted to chat with you and drill down into one specific piece, which is helping people understand some of the sources of risk related to using generative AI in your UCaaS solutions. So maybe you can start us off by just like talking about some of those areas, and let's go from there, Brent.
Well, sure. So as we think about risks, Kevin, I think I'm going to start with one that I think is going to be the biggest risk that people are going to face that are using some of these tools. I think we mentioned in our presentation at Enterprise Connect that most knowledge workers and most of the people who will have access to AI, at least within UCaaS solutions, we're talking Teams, WebEx, Zoom, Ring Central, and Google Meet and so forth, they're going to use summarization.
Right.
Well, one of the issues there is, first of all, is the speech-to-text going to be accurate? I think you and I experienced a couple of times when the speech-to-text itself was exactly opposite from what was actually said in the meeting. So, and the reason I'm bringing that up is because this text is so critical, is in that it feeds into the rest of this generative AI engine. So your text, first of all, has to be right. And then really, I think the thing that people are going to stumble over, these tools will give you a summarization of the meeting. And I bet that many, many people are going to send these out without reviewing them. But if I can just emphasize, please review those every single time, because as a matter of fact, I was trying to do something this week, Kevin, with one of my colleagues. I turned off having it record the transcript, thinking, oh, the summarization is really good in this particular UCaaS tool we were using. Well, the summarization came out, first of all, not being good, and second of all, I didn't have the original transcript because I didn't record it. Anyway, there's just these little issues that are coming up as you use these tools. So I think I'm going to stop there and just give you a chance to talk and comment on this.
Yeah, well, I think you bring up, a really good point, which is two things have to go right to get an accurate summary. Is first, as you point out, the speech to text. So that's obviously impacted by, background noise, the audio devices you're using. If you're in a room with multiple people or in an office, it might be more challenging. And to your point, if the speech to text mixes a not or, the negation of something, then all of a sudden, what the AI is going to summarize is based on wrong information. So the first part, I think that's great for calling that out. And then the second thing is, these models are probabilistic, meaning you get different results at different times. So it's like, and I know you were adamant about this. I remember at Enterprise Connect, and you're never going to live this down. Brent got up on the table to emphasize this point that you really, as a human, you own whatever summaries you send out. So please, please, please review these summaries, right?
I could not
Because even if it
emphasize.
gets it right 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, when it gets it wrong, if you don't review it, there could potentially be some negative business impacts.
I think that's a really good point, because the AI is the co-pilot, not the pilot, right? You're the pilot.
Right.
So
Right. And I think to go back and just to tie it back to that grounding term, I think all the vendors are looking to provide more grounding information into the meeting summaries.
Mm-hmm.
But at present, the only information source for the summary of the meeting is the transcript of the meeting. So, for instance, if you use acronyms, maybe they're defined in other business documents, but right now, the meeting summaries don't have access to that. So, really you need to, I think people think that the AI is looking across more documents and is being grounded. And, and grounding reduces risk, right? Because it keeps the guardrails and it keeps it in the right context. But today the meetings are only looking at the transcript. All the vendors have said they're going to add additional sources of information. But today it's 100% based on the transcript.
To that point, we're talking about a term called multicast, which effectively, at least the way we're using it, it's the joining together of UCaaS and CCaaS. Well, none of these tools understand that term, and so it comes out as multicast or multi-hyphen something else, and so your point's well taken. You have to review these transcripts and you have to review these summaries, or it's going to get stuff wrong.
So what happens?
And I think, when you look at the different tools, they all to different degrees try to remind the users to review this. And they do, each of them, whether it's Zoom or WebEx or Google Gemini or Microsoft Copilot, they all have some work to be done here. Some of them remind you when you're making the transcript, but then they don't remind you when you're reviewing the transcript. Some let you edit the AI-generated transcript. Others don't, which is really problematic because now if it's wrong, you can't fix it and it's hanging around.
Right.
So, these are early days, and it's pretty impressive. When these meeting summaries work, they're quite magical. In fact, there's been a few that I've thought, this has to be a human had to be involved, but it did a phenomenal job.
Right.
So certainly, understanding that these are fallible, and like anybody, if some other person took notes, if a human took notes, you would review the notes if they were important. If an AI takes notes, you should also review it if you're the person sending it out.
Absolutely.
So, great. That's a great point, and obviously a key area of risk.
Right.
So now, Brent, there were some other areas of risk that I think we talked about, and maybe why don't you expand on another area?
Well, let me first of all mention an area of non-risk. So if you're using these tools that we talked about, say Microsoft Copilot or Zoom or WebEx or Google Meet, the thing that you can be assured of is if you're inside those environments, you're not going to lose data and it's not going to become part of some trained model somewhere. So yeah, you can put that risk and that worry aside as long as you're staying inside those environments. However, the caveat is, suppose you say, well, maybe it's not working right or it's too slow or whatever, and then you choose to go out to some place that's on the open web. You can go to OpenAI's site directly, which in principle is the same LLM that Microsoft is using. But if you go to their website directly as opposed to using it through Microsoft and through Azure, then you're subject to data loss. And it's not just with OpenAI, it's with any of these guys. If you just have to make sure that you know what you're getting into and what the parameters of the LLM are. Are they going to be using your data if you go out to one of these free public sites on the web? So that's just another risk. And most companies, at least like mine, so Omdia's parent is Informa. We have 11 or 12,000 people. We have this policy that says, please do not go out on the open web to do this kind of stuff. Stay within your, kind of within these tools that give you a nice guardrail so that you're not exposing company information. So that's one. Kevin, do you have another one in mind?
Well, I think, with that one, just to build on that, Brent, I think for IT pros,
Mm-hmm.
there's this term like shadow AI, which is like, used to be like shadow IT. It's like, so if you don't provide your users with corporately sanctioned generative AI tools, they may get creative and say, hey, here's a merger and acquisition document that we're considering, and please summarize this, in one of the public tools, and that is intellectual property data loss. So I think that's, as an IT pro, you got to think, okay, well, if you don't support any of these tools, what are your end users going to do? And is there any mitigation strategy, beyond training and putting policies in place to block them from doing that, right? So I think the other area of risk that I feel, because I've certainly experienced this, is, we look at, and there's a lot of studies, and I think in 2024, a lot of experimentation around productivity improvements, but, there's a risk of productivity loss, either because people get enamored and say, write this document like in a poem format or what have you. So they're kind of, being enchanted by some of the AI and maybe not advancing business results. And then in other areas, and especially in some of the image generation, I've run into situations where, I've tried to create images, whether it's through the DALL-E 3 model or the just different, image generative models. And you go through and there's still cases where you get weird fingers or just like some bizarre looking things. So I've occasionally spent like 20 minutes trying to create something just to say, I'm just going to go and use a stock photo, right? So I think, over the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to have to monitor closely to see, is AI getting us to end of job faster, or is it somehow, it's fun and it's interesting, but it's not a straight line to productivity improvement. So certainly, I think we're going to have a lot more quantitative data as throughout the balance of this year.
That is a really good point, because I was using Co-Pilot within Excel recently, and I thought, oh, this is fun. I've got some data. I put it in a table. I can start talking to Co-Pilot and asking it things about the data.
Right.
And then I realized after about an hour that I'd asked it questions that I could have just calculated myself using a formula. And I was thinking, hang on. Now, if AI can do that for me and I'm not learning the formulas and I'm not troubleshooting the formulas to get them right, then effectively I'm becoming quite lazy. And I could have actually done this probably faster myself, just with some calculations, or even got a calculator out and done it faster than what I did. So there's some real trade-offs. You're absolutely right. And I think the productivity loss piece is definitely one to monitor. Is it, Kevin? Is that what advice you would give to business leaders, navigating this landscape?
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think, there's some interesting things around when you're doing, let's say, pilots of AI. I think that there's some evidence to suggest, with a lot of technology, when you do a pilot, you kind of sprinkle it around your organization. You might say, let some salespeople do it, let some admin assistants, let some manufacturing. So I think with AI, there's some suggestions that it's better to have a cohort. So if you have 20 licenses, or you're going to have 20 people, you say, give it to 20 salespeople, because that cohort will figure out use cases amongst themselves and prompts and things that really work well for them. And I think that that's really what we need to do, is we need to collectively, and this is back to the Coca-Cola, Microsoft, I'm sure they're going to do a lot of experimentations, figure out what use cases are the ones that are delivering, measurable business value. And I think that's not new with this technology. I mean, that's with all technologies, but I think especially there are ways to get distracted with generative AI more so than, with perhaps some of the other technology we've deployed.
Brent, any
If I
final
could add one
thoughts?
other, if I could just add a couple of other experiences that relate to what we're talking about here with productivity. So I have had some marvelous experiences creating an outline and then feeding that into, say, something like Microsoft Co-Pilot and having it generate the prose around the outline. It's worked fantastic on a couple of things. I tried it this week, it was a pound fail. It just did so bad
Mm.
on it, and it really surprised me. And another situation that happened this week was, I think I alluded to it earlier, I was doing a meeting summary, and it was just so bad. It was awful. It was wrong, and it didn't pull out some of the main points that I was expecting that it would. Um, and it led me to wonder, so there's a fair amount of flux going on, or change going on with what's going on in these LLMs. And it made me wonder if there had been some changes that happened under the hood that, in the LLM, because they're tweaking them and doing little things. And these were two different tools, but it made me wonder if there were some changes going on that I didn't know about that caused me to have really great experiences a week or two ago, and just an awful experience this time. So I think there's a little bit of, we're going to have to try it and see. So, to your point, Rob, was I productive? Well, I was productive when I used it a couple of weeks ago. Was I productive yesterday? No, it was horrible, and I had to sit down and rewrite the whole thing by hand because it was just awful. So anyway, it's going to be a little bit of a trial and error and learning and kind of letting these things solidify just a little bit. I think that's going to be important for IT leaders to know that there's going to have to be some experience and give and take, and sometimes they'll work great and sometimes they won't.
I suppose
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I mean, these are exciting times, Brent. Thank you for joining us and talking through some of these risks and some of these really key points in terms of understanding. And I think that's what we hope to do on this AI show moving forward is drill down into some of these areas as we learn all together, right? And hopefully make the best use from a business perspective of these exciting Gen AI tools.
Absolutely. Well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. Thanks to Kevin Kieller and Brent Kelly. Thanks so much for joining us. And thanks to everyone for watching our AI show. If you've got some good takeaways from today's session, do give us a quick mention on social. And you can always connect with myself, Kevin, and Brent on LinkedIn. And our links are going to be down there in the description. Thanks for watching.